Good to see my commissioner colleagues here and the attorney and manager and clerk. Great to be with you here again on this cool and rainy evening as we're heading into a big weather change. So nice to have folks who've attended here and with the chambers, in the chambers here as well. So let's get this meeting started. I want to call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order for Monday, November 18th, 2024. Clerk Bourne, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Decker.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson. Vice Mayor Hess.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, commissioners. May I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Wilson from the meeting this evening?
Moved. Support.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Hess, supported by Commissioner Decker. All in favor? Motion made by Commissioner Decker and supported by a competing team and, okay, call Vice Mayor Hess. Okay. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Thank you. Communications, City Manager.
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Now is the opportunity for public comments for the Committee of the Whole meeting. Just as a reminder, public comments at the Committee of the Whole meeting are limited to 2 minutes, unlike a little longer period at our regular business meeting. If you have a comment for our Committee of the Whole meeting, please come forward, state your name and whether you live in the city. You'll have 2 minutes. Seeing no one, we are now on to the work of our Committee of the Whole work session. Manager Ritzma.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, we're going to receive a presentation from Dennis Randolph, our Public Works Division Manager and Traffic Engineer, and he's going to talk to us this evening about transportation safety and give us an update on all that.
Welcome, Mr. Randolph. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. It's nice to be here to talk to you about something I've done my whole life. That's terrible to say, but that's been my life. But I think we've had some really good things happening in the city, and I wanted to talk.
I'm sorry, Dennis. Evidently, there is someone who wanted to make a public comment? Sorry about that. I didn't see you.
My name is Elisa Weir. I'd like to speak. I am speaking. I'm here today to discuss family in a kingdom. I'd like to bring together law and God together. I don't want any separation of church and state. I believe that I know for a fact a mother has a place with children together. I know that people make mistakes or choices and that they're accountable for every action. And with that being said, there are effects of the foster care system that are adversely affecting people, me, and I believe that mothers and fathers that have seeds should have a say and say so for their children's endeavors forever and ever. Amen. And that they should, especially mothers and children, are the most vulnerable, and they should be protected at all costs. There's no rhyme or reason for a mother that is still here and strong to be away
So I'm sorry, but the 2-minute public comment time is up for this meeting. But if you would like to make another public comment, you could do that at our business meeting, which starts at 7. Yes, it started at 2 minutes and it went down to, so now it's reset at 2 minutes, yes. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers who would like to provide a public comment? See no one? Dennis Randolph, welcome back.
I'm going to talk about 3 things. First, kind of the path we've been heading down for the last several years regarding traffic and transportation in the city. I wanted to show you the results that we've gotten so far. And then I wanted to close out by showing you some of the systems that we've installed and that we're using, because there are always questions about, well, do you know what you're talking about and where are the numbers? And I thought I'd just touch on that real briefly for you so that you would know. You know, when I came here, I found a real crash problem. I've worked for a number of cities and counties over the past years, and we had a lot of crashes, a lot of bicycle, pedestrian crashes. When I did calculations based upon all the other cities in the state of Michigan, I found that Kalamazoo was averaging about 1 excess crash a day over what I would normally expect as for a community our size. So 300 to 400 crashes a year, too many. And that, you know, any is too many. But this was more than I really would expect for Kalamazoo. I thought I knew Kalamazoo a bit, but it kind of fooled me. So we started looking at crashes, and we've been focusing on a lot of our work downtown. And I just wanted to show you a minute a spot map that we use and the density of the crashes that we've had. That and whoops. Got to push the right button. Pedestrian crashes. And I want to tell you a story. When I started in the business 53 years ago, we used to make spot maps, and we'd use pins on big boards. And I worked for Macomb County, a big county with lots of crashes. And if somebody bumped into the board, the pins would fall off, and we'd have to kind of start over again to see what was happening with crashes. And it's a lot better now, and I'll show you in a little bit how much better. But what I found in particular, and we got a lot of complaints, a lot of folks would say speed is a problem. And again, I've been coming to Kalamazoo for a lot of years. I knew speed was a problem. I always thought it was just the kids over at the colleges. But what I found, it was a little broader problem than that, so I can't blame all the college kids or the high school kids. We have a general speeding problem, and speed really, it's always said speed kills. And we always glanced over the fact as traffic engineers that speed also caused crashes because we couldn't tie it together statistically, significant way. But in fact, speed makes crashes, and it causes injuries and causes problems. And if we wanted to knock down our crash totals, one of the things we really had to do was address speeding. And I wanted to show you another way, and this is the chart I use when I'm looking at crash reductions and what speed does. And every time somebody says you've got a speed problem, or how much have you made a difference by changing the speed 1 or 2 miles an hour on a street, I use these charts produced by AAA to be able to get some consequences of our actions. And again, what we're trying to do is make sure that we do our engineering, do our planning work, transportation planning work, based upon facts and figures. I've got lots of assumptions. Everybody has opinions about what's going on. And, you know, after 50 years, I've got a tremendous number, but I don't use those to try to make things different here in Kalamazoo. We stick to the numbers that we have. In trying to knock down speeds, try to make things better. We're using a lot of different techniques, and I know you hear about them, and I won't describe them all, but we're using a lot of techniques that are being used all around the country. I think that's one of the things I want to emphasize. We're doing some groundbreaking work, actually, with Western Michigan University and some of the professors there, and I'll just touch on that. But most of the things we're doing have been proven over the years by other agencies, and certainly by the Federal Highway Administration, Department of Transportation, those folks who lead traffic safety efforts in the whole country and across the world, actually. And I think sometimes people, because they haven't seen them or they haven't been here, they say, well, that's not quite right, or that's wrong. Well, I guess that's an opinion. But again, I try to stick to the facts and things that are used. And if we can stumble across some new techniques, which we have actually, that's great too. You know, we'll tell people about them. I was in Chicago last week talking about the things we're doing, and I had a nice crowd interested. I had a webinar right after. I talked twice last Thursday, so I'm kind of not talked out. It just warmed me up. But we had a national audience, again, hearing about what we're doing because people are interested, not just in the fact that we got a bunch of grants, but that for the reasons we did it, for safety, for making the community more livable. And we're getting a lot of folks who want to hear what we're doing. And again, they can be my biggest critics. You know, if I say I'm doing this and all of a sudden I've got traffic engineers over half the country saying you're nuts, it gives me room to think about what's going on. But I'm not having that, so I feel good about that. What I really wanted to get into, though, and we've been working with the numbers all year, is, well, for the last 6 months, I've been trying to get data because I've been here basically 3.5 years, 4 years. So we've got some data from changes that I could say this is what's happening that is significant when you look at it. And what we found, and I've been using a before and after period kind of analysis, looking at crashes from 2014 to 2019. That's a nice set of data. COVID came in. Things kind of went to pot. We don't use that data in traffic engineer. But since then, 22, 23, and now just about all of 24, we've got some nice after data that accounts for a lot of the things we've been doing. And some of it has been building over time. And you can see my numbers, and I'll go to the bottom line of what's happened. Compared with the before period, right now, this year, 24, we have knocked down total crashes in the city about 23%. I think any way you look at it, that's a meaningful number. What I think is really good, and it's a check for me, is that when I look at the whole state of Michigan, that's all the rest minus Kalamazoo, crashes are down about 17% for the state. So generally crashes have been down, but we've got a 6-7% difference. And I really feel we can attribute that much more difference in the things we've been doing to calm traffic, to manage speeds, to try to raise awareness about safety in the city. And that's 6-7%, again, I think is a meaningful number. Hopefully we'll see it in the profession in ITE Journal next year, because they've already said they were interested in hearing about it there. So those are good numbers. I think, though, sometimes just total crashes don't mean a lot to many people. And you'll see down at the bottom of the page where I've translated those crashes into the number of crashes we've saved from the before period. And more importantly, about 16% of all the crashes we have involve somebody being injured, from being killed all the way down to just bumps and bruises. But it's marked on the report, they had to seek medical attention. And what we're really seeing And what I think is really real for people is that we've had at least 180 people that we've had not have to seek medical attention over the past 3 years. And it's a minimum because I use the number of crashes, and in a lot of crashes, there's more than one person who gets injured. So then I'm being conservative, but I also think that's a great number. We have kept 180 people out of Bronson's emergency room, and I think that's meaningful for the community. So I think partly when we're in traffic, we talk about crashes and we talk about speed, and that doesn't always relate to people. But saying you haven't gone to the hospital, and you know, medicine is great. My wife and son are in that area and work there. But keeping people from having to be in the emergency room is the best thing we can do. You never get fixed after you've been broken in a crash, okay? That's a fact. And so I think what we're doing is really meaningful, and is right now the trend, you'll see the curve in a second, is it's continuing down. How far down it's going to go, I don't know. I'm not even going to bet. But we've made an impact so far. You can see I also did some comparisons, again, between the city and the state, just to show you that when I say we've made things safer, that it's not just a number I've conjured up. We've got data, and I'll show you where that data comes from in a minute, just so you hopefully feel comfortable about it. We've done the same thing with bicycle and pedestrian crashes, and one of the things you'll see on these charts is that, again, pedestrian and bicycle-related crashes have gone down 17% in the city in our after period. Again, for the state of Michigan as a whole, they've been down 11%. But you also know, if you watch the national news or see some of the information, generally across the whole country, ped and bicycle crashes are increasing. So again, I think we're making a good shot. And one of the concerns I'm sure you've heard, I know you have, every time we do something with bicycles especially, you say, oh, you're going to make things so dangerous. You know, you're going to turn Park and Westnedge into this dangerous thing because you put bike paths on the left side of the road. Well, no, I haven't had anybody get killed. And the last time I looked, I didn't even have a crash out there. But the bicycle facilities, the ped facilities we've been putting in have worked. The numbers show that. And I think that's what's important for you all to have, again, some confidence in what we're doing and that we're headed in the right direction. You can see, again, just sometimes a curve is a little easier to see, and you can see what's happening. I'm not sure how far down that red curve's going. I hope it goes down for forever, but I'm practical too. I'm an old engineer, and we're going to find some point where it works good. What I would like, though, is if we can translate that red line into 0 fatalities. We don't have a lot of fatalities in Kalamazoo, 5 to 7 fatal crashes a year, somewhere around there. It's a little high this year. But that's easily within striking distance of 0 fatals. And I think that would be a great accomplishment for us, and hopefully with some of the grants we're working on right now, especially our SS4A grant, Safe Streets for All grant, that we might be able to hit that particular objective. And there are a few places around Michigan that have done that. It'd be nice to join them. And again, it's a target I think we can really hit. Again, the ped bike, you can see in this case, I blocked out the COVID years, so I'm not always sure how people take that because the numbers kind of jump around those 2 years, but we won't count them. Again, our numbers are going down, and we are tracking the numbers constantly. So, again, we're getting good results, but where am I getting my data from? And I wanted to just go by that real quick for you because we have some really nice systems set up now. They're a good source of data. My biggest problem is actually having the time to be able to crank the data. all right? And the last couple months haven't been fun at all with construction. You know as much about that as I do, okay? It's been tough. But we have the systems in place, and as I fill some empty spots, hopefully we'll do a little more analysis for you. I did want to show you one example that I did for Stadium Drive and Michigan Avenue, since that's kind of a showpiece. You know, we fixed Stadium Drive up in a couple projects, and that it runs into Michigan Avenue, and we've done some things on Michigan Avenue. So I wanted to show you, but we use a state police crash system. It's run by them. They put the data in. When the police department here fills in crash reports, UD10s, they send them to the state police. Every city, every community, sheriffs, everybody puts their information into that database. It usually runs about 2 weeks behind, so it's really accurate. It's been common in the past that I would have to wait a year, sometimes 2 years, to get crash data. This is really current, a couple of weeks. What's even cooler is that I can compare Kalamazoo to any place in the state of Michigan. So I always compare the places I've been. Macomb County, I was engineer in Lansing, so I like to see how my scorecard is against my old places. But I can make spot maps, I get all types of statistics, and I'll show you what's happened on Stadium. We also have another system, and I talked, and I think you got tired of hearing me about Streetlight, and eventually I was going to have this system that had speed and volume data, and we finally got it. It's been one of the coolest tools I've ever used. It gives speed and volume data, and it makes nifty charts like this. And this is a speed profile you can see on Stadium and along Michigan Avenue as of September, okay, 2 months ago. The data runs about 2 months behind on some, but very accurate. Again, usually for volume data, you get one chance a year, and you might count every other year, and that's generally our counting schedule. But you can never get anything so close to this to show what's happening. And right now I'm comparing data from 2019, which is as far back as that system goes. Again, it's a before period, with what's happening. September, October just came up. Really current data. And you can see the speed profiles. I think these are the coolest charts. And you can see how the speed gets slower. Obviously, Stadium out by the university, out on the west side of town, it's a pretty fast street, although it has slowed down since we did our improvement job a couple years ago and put that median in. Really helped a lot. But it also, besides speed data, which I can get for any street in the city, okay, I can also get volume data, and this you can see how volumes change along Stadium, Michigan Avenue, where it's high and where it's low. These happen to be for a total for the days. Okay, but I can also break it down. You'll see one in a minute that just shows PM peak, or I can get AM peak, or at lunchtime, or even any hour during the day. But again, you get so much data that it's a problem to analyze it. There's a lot to do with it. We're developing another system that helps me do that, and you'll start hearing about that in a little bit, or not tonight, but maybe the next time I talk with you. And you can see what we're doing to try to make use of all this data in the best way possible, most useful for us. But I wanted to show you, again, we're talking about Stadium from Rambling up along Michigan to Harrison. Those are the parts we own now. And I wanted to show you, again, this is all day, all time period, so it's a daily average. You can see that we can look at an average speed or a 50th percentile, again, a little different than the average. I put the 85th percentile there mainly because that's still the method used by road commissions and the highway department to set speeds, which is totally wrong, and I think is being changed. But I wanted to show you what's happening. So we've got about between 2019 and 2024 on Stadium in Michigan, a reduction in the average daily speed of about 1 mile an hour. Not a whole heck of a lot, but I'm sure you hear people tell you almost every day how we've brought traffic to a grinding halt along Stadium and Michigan Avenue because of all the bad things we've been doing. Well, I don't know if an average reduction in speed of 1 mile an hour is that big of a problem. But if you go back to those earlier charts that I showed you about speed and the risk of fatal and serious crashes, 1 or 2 miles an hour makes a big difference. Your chance of living goes up significantly, even with that amount of reduction. Again, that's our target. It's not so much just a blanket, I'm going to reduce speeds, but can I get some good results and keep people from going to the hospital? That's what we really want. Again, what the system also can tell me is travel time. And if you look here on this one, I think, again, with that that horrible speed reduction, we've only, again, a daily average, only increased the travel time along all those segments of street by about 9 seconds, 2.5%. I hear almost every week the story of it takes 15 minutes to go through downtown. No, it might take you a minute or two longer. It takes 15 minutes when the train is there, and I was watching the trains downtown this morning. But you know what? The trains have been coming through Kalamazoo and crossing Michigan for a long time, so it's not anything we've done. But we have some real data for you, okay, that we can look at to actually see what's going on. Again, I ran this just because this is during the peak. This is a peak period map, and like I said, I can run numbers for almost any time of the day and do comparisons back to before and after, to help explain things. Now, we're using a lot of this data as we get into our design for Michigan Avenue. And I wanted to tell you a story about that because we've been doing a lot of outreach, as you know, for Michigan Avenue recently, community development, and we have been having a lot of meetings, and they've been having an online survey out there. And one of the interesting things about the survey is that when they asked, how are you involved with Michigan Avenue? Only 12% of the folks who responded to that survey said they actually stopped for a business downtown. 88% were using it as a cut-through. The same people who probably complain the most about the horrendous speed changes we've put out. But I always think about those people running through downtown to get from one side of the county to the other, that they don't have a lot of respect for what's going on downtown, for the people who are walking around, for our businessmen or people, for just visitors. And I think that's partly how I'm looking at it as a traffic engineer, and I guess you get to tell me if that's the wrong viewpoint, all right? But I think I've worked in other cities where I've had downtowns, a little city with just 25,000 people, Lansing, which had twice as many people as we got. And I think I've seen what a transportation job can do for a downtown in terms of rejuvenating it. I don't know if you've heard my story in Grandview, where I came from just before I was here. We did a two-way job, so this is my second. And they finished it just after I moved back up here. I retired and came up here, and they finished the job. And they were so thrilled because of the results they've gotten by slowing traffic down, by making greater opportunities to circulate. But their high point, and everybody in town was going nuts about it, is you all know Patrick Mahomes, kind of the king of Kansas City. Well, he came in along our new two-way frontage roads, and he built a Whataburger, his favorite. And that was a big accomplishment to have a big-time star come in and invest money in our city because of the transportation change that we made. And I think we've got a lot more opportunities up here. Okay, I don't think Patrick will come up here and build a Whataburger, but we might pitch him someday and see. But again, even a couple miles an hour speed change, even diverting some of the traffic. And what these charts are also showing is, yeah, I'm diverting some traffic. A lot of the big trucks have started to find another route. Some of the cars who really want to go fast are finding another route. But that's okay, because they weren't stopping anyway. Okay, 12% isn't a lot. So again, it's the perspective we're having, but we have the data to show these things, and I think that's what's really important. So again, we have a lot of data. I wanted to show you another thing we can do with the data. This is Oakland, and we can run a lot of fancy statistics. I want to show you this one. This is in August. The top line, the blue line, is the speeds, the percentage of people who travel at different speed. And the bottom line is the after. And what it shows is that 30 miles an hour is the speed limit out on Oakland. How many people were traveling at 30 and 35? And again, we may have only changed the average speed a mile or two, but we changed significantly the percentage of people who were obeying the law without having a policeman out there. That's what's important. I also want to show you, if you look on the far right-hand side, you'll see that the people who don't care at all, who want to go 40 or 45, well, they're still out there. They're the ones the police need to focus on. Our traffic calming efforts are working pretty well with the rest of folks. So again, what I try to do as we implement things is look at the data and just get a real good feel for what's happening. So again, we have the nice crash data. I can look anywhere in Michigan if you want a comparison about your favorite little city. I can do that. That's not a problem. The whole county. Again, I can look at the city, break it off for any of the years between 2014 and 2024, by month, by day, by hour, by type of crash, anything you'd like. Again, Stadium in Michigan is what I've been looking at recently, and the results have been good. So we have a lot of data. It's good data. It works. I've checked it over and over again. But more importantly, we're getting some good results. Okay, 23% is, I think, it's one of the best successes I've had in all my years of being a traffic engineer. And I'm really pleased because I think we're going to have further reductions as we go along. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Well, thank you very much for being here with us, Mr. Randolph. I appreciate your efforts and being here this evening. Questions, commissioners? Vice Mayor Hess.
I'll go, because this is something near and dear to my heart, having had a crash myself in the township, not the city. And it wasn't me. My fault. It was not my fault. Not my fault. It was a speeding, texting, red light running driver. Few things. I just have a few thoughts here that, you know, we here at the City of Kalamazoo are looking to keep our residents safe, whether it be in their vehicles or whether it be as victims of violence, especially gun violence. My driver's ed teacher, Mr. Francoeur, back in 1970-something, pretty much put it in my mind forever that your car is a weapon, right? Your car is, whether you take your car or whether you take a gun and take a life, it's still a life. I see your passion about this. I understand what you're talking about and why we're trying to do what we're doing here in the city. People have to slow down. And I put myself in that. And we are all working together to make Kalamazoo safer. Of course, when we say, oh, we're better, just whether we say we're down with deaths from gun violence or we're down with deaths from crashes, it doesn't matter until we get to zero. So we're going to keep working.
Yes.
We're going to keep working, Dennis. And so I think that whether it's your plan or whether it's our blueprint for peace, that we're probably, we have a lot of work to do in front of us. But I think as people buy into those plans and people are aware of those plans, and the more we put out in public those plans, and that people understand them, the better off we're going to be. And the quality of life in Kalamazoo will only increase. Maybe not Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we can get Aiden to come and do a Whataburger. So, just saying. I have a question, and as you well know, a lot of us get emailed questions from city residents about why are we doing this or why are we doing that, and because I don't feel qualified to fully answer it with all of your data and all of your history as a traffic engineer, I normally send them to you, and I really appreciate your thorough and complete and well thought out answers to these single residents, and they do challenge us. And so I'm wondering if you might address a few of the major things we've been seeing, especially in the Winchell neighborhood. If you could talk about that, because Winchell was one of those first neighborhoods with a neighborhood plan. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to calm their traffic. So if you would address that and some of the things that are going on in Winchell to help make it safer, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got an example I can talk to you right now. I didn't put them in the slides because, again, I'm still looking at them. Chevy Chase had lots of questions about the traffic circles in Chevy Chase and whether I should have yield signs or stop signs. Actually, I got another email today from the folks over on Maple in Indiana. And while the folks in Chevy Chase says you got to change those stops to yields, the person at Maple, Indiana said you need to change the yields to stops. So I tend to get these colliding theories. But I want to tell you about Chevy Chase because we have calmed that street in two ways, which is really, I hadn't even thought a lot about the other way. One way is we have dropped the speeds, a couple miles an hour. And again, 2 miles an hour means a big difference in somebody if they get hit by a car. It's as simple as that. But the other thing is that I found that we've cut the volume on Chevy Chase about half. And what that's telling me, and tell me if you think that's crazy what I'm going to tell you, but it says a lot of people were running down Chevy Chase and using it as a cut-through. And when we made it a little more difficult for them to just cut through, they found a different way to go. That's real preliminary, and that's why I didn't put it on the board. But I think I'm going to be able to find that in other neighborhoods. You know, we just went through the Edison neighborhood and put a bunch of circles. They're really cool. You want to know one of the ways we picked the intersections? I think, yes, the donuts. Yes, where I saw donuts in the intersection, we put a circle in. We're going to stop that nonsense. And so I try to be real practical in my applications, but also in Winchell, along Chevy Chase, I try not to just rubber stamp things. I said, well, I did this here, so I'm going to do it here, 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 and here. That's not engineering. That's checkbox. That's blind application of something. We try to take the time to look at a location and tailor whatever we're doing to that situation. And I think that's the difference between what we're doing now and what my predecessors may have done or what a lot of other traffic engineers are doing. Although, if you follow our business, you'll see that the new generation of traffic engineers, especially those in local government, in cities and counties, do the same thing. They're doing real engineering. And as an engineering teacher, I think that's important, that I use my degree and everything else that I've learned over the years to do real engineering. So, but we've had some interesting results over there. Crashes are down, and in the whole neighborhood, and I think one of the reasons is if nothing else, everybody's talking and thinking about it, and that helps. That helps. If you're thinking, well, that crazy guy, I don't know what he's going to do to me next, but I'm going to think just a little bit more. That's what I think is happening over there too. We also had a big discussion last year down by the at the end of Winchell, down by the preserve. It's interesting. Speeds have gone up down there. So I'm not quite sure. There haven't been any crashes, and that's nice, but the speeds certainly didn't go down. And they have gone down on other places of Winchell, in particular by the school and the churches. Again, that helps. And as we do our Safe Route to School job out there next year in 2025, I think it'll help even more. It'll get people out of the street, which is what we want. One thing we found up on Park and on Westnedge, North Park and North Westnedge, one of the biggest things that was pleased about when we put those bike paths in was not that I got a whole bunch of people on them, although I see them all the time, but you know what they did? They got cars away from the houses, at least on one side. There are a lot more people walking around, which I think is just as good a benefit and an accomplishment for the neighborhood, that you can feel a little more comfortable walking on the street and not having somebody clip you or run up on the curve and run you over. So again, we try to tailor things, and I think that's really what I think we've been trying to do out in Winchell and Chevy Chase and in Edison and in all the neighborhoods where we've been trying to do things.
Right, and I've noticed it, and I really, really appreciate that. And I really appreciate how you will reach out and listen to the residents. You're willing to, I want the residents to know that we are very willing to listen to what it is they have to say. And most of us also here, we want a speed bump here, or we want a speed bump there. And I know you're doing that work, and I know you're looking at it, but I know speed bumps definitely work. And I think if neighborhoods throughout Kalamazoo had their way, they would have speed bumps everywhere.
And one of my objectives for this coming year, especially since I've got this nifty speed data now, we're going to go through all the speed humps in town, and we're going to see what kind of impact they really had for you. And I do know they work, okay, but they're also miserable things to live with. They're horrible. Yeah, they slow you down, but if there's other ways to use too, but I'm going to have some real numbers for you. I hope midsummer that we'll have looked at them.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Randolph. One of the questions I get oftentimes is, why did so many techniques have to happen at the same time?
Yeah. We're kind of playing catch up, especially in terms of bicycle things and some pedestrian things. We really lag behind a lot of other communities, and our crash numbers showed it. So I think it's not so much that I want to do a whole bunch of stuff. It's that there are crashes that I think we can knock down. And again, that's one reason I try to emphasize now how many people I've kept out of Bronson emergency room, because I think that's really what's important. Unfortunately, especially this year, there's been a lot of construction. But we've learned a lot. And we're already setting up our new projects, especially as we do the conversion jobs, breaking work up in those smaller pieces, making sure that there aren't long periods where the grades are open or, the surfaces are torn up. So we're really using it as a good learning experience. I mean, maybe you say, well, you don't need to learn, but yeah, you got to learn. You got to see what's tailored to the community. I think the other thing that we're doing, especially with construction, is that with the system we've had, I've been able to see where people were detouring. And it's interesting. We set some detours up. And by looking at the traffic volumes, I've seen that people didn't follow the detours. And they seemed really like, they followed the procedures the highway department follows and all that. But people were going in different places. And I think as we set up our next series of detours, they're going to be much more workable for everybody in the city and help them not want to cut through neighborhoods and do things like that. So this year has really been interesting. We learned a lot. We still ended up saving crashes and things like that, so it wasn't a negative thing, but I think the perception in the community was it was a little rough. We're working on that one. Yeah, it was more than a little rough, I know.
Wasn't a perception.
Yeah.
It was out cold.
Yeah. It was tough, and I ended up jumping in the middle a couple months ago, and it's been an exciting time.
So what I just heard, Mr. Randolph, is that in the future, there'll be more coordination between departments and more collaboration and communication.
Yeah, you're going to see, actually, we're doing some really neat things, maps that show where detours are and who's working where. We're going to have a lot more information out on the web that people can look at. Dates are tough for construction. I'm working on that. We're analyzing what happened this summer, and maybe I'll come back sometime and show you what happened this summer with our construction projects. I teach construction management for the University of Missouri, and so it's a side interest, but when people say, well, why has that road been closed so long, and I don't see anybody working, you haven't, I think, been given information about why things like that happen. And so I've been working on that item, and hopefully I can give you a little better idea about what's going on those projects. So it's a number of areas. I think in the end, it's all traffic safety. That's the way I look at things. But again, we're working on a bunch of things right now.
Thank you for that. And my last question for you is, there is a community perception that you, as one human being and traffic engineer, make all the decisions by yourself. Could you bring clarity to that, please?
Yeah, actually, and I think, I don't know if Christina's here, but yes, hopefully she's nodding her head right. We really have a really close working relationship. I think my work overlaps in the transportation planning, and she has planners. I used to be a planner in a couple lives before, but we really have a good relationship with community development. And the neat thing is, we've been training our consultants, and one of the best examples of that collaboration is this. We go out to a meeting, we gather input, and we actually change our plans. And it's not because we did something wrong, it's because we heard a good idea. That's what we did on Kalamazoo Avenue through the Stewart neighborhood. We changed significantly the plan. So yeah, I think we're working real well with them. It's actually great as an old-time engineer that we're doing it, because sometimes there is friction between the engineers and the planners and the other folks around. So yeah, we're working, I think, real good.
Thank you so much.
Other questions? Commissioners? Yeah, Commissioner Cooney.
So I just have to tell you about, I don't understand how we could have done such a bad job on the markets, the North Street market and the one in Midtown, and the implications that's had on those people, and also the failure to communicate with them and tell them that these things are going to happen. They wake up one day and then there's a change and nobody talked to them. And that's really hurt those people, and I'm quite upset about that. So I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that one. The second thing is, one of the things that I hear a lot is, I wish somebody had come and talked to me before they made those changes there. I certainly wish we would do that better. If we're going to make changes in a road or something in a neighborhood, that's going to affect those people, or we're going to take parking places away from in front of their house, we have to talk to those people first before that happens. And then the third thing I want to say is that people still complain about people going too fast through the streets. And one of the suggestions I hear, and I don't know, what about using electronic monitors to get some of those people? What do you think about those three things?
That's the easiest one to answer, because in order to have traffic cameras or things like that, it has to start in Lansing. We need enabling law in Lansing for community to do that. So I always tell folks, yep, feel free. I don't have a problem. I support them. We had them in Missouri when I was working down there. But we need the legislature to make a law that says it's okay for cities to do that. So that is a good item to put on your talking list when you meet with them. I think regarding the other things, and we really are amping up our communications with folks, so I understand what you're saying. And again, it was a tough summer. Hopefully we won't have nearly as bad a problem. And I've been in construction a long time. I've always had people who were concerned about what we were doing. I like to drive those numbers down as far as I can. Okay, so I don't want to have people complaining or concerned about what we're doing. I want to do the best. I'm always going to have a few people who do. I try to minimize that. So I'm not going to run from it. Yeah, it was tough this year. And that's one reason I'm also spending a bunch of time on what happened on our construction projects, so that I can beef up our construction specifications, our contract specifications, because I think there are some things we specifically could do to hold contractors a little more accountable, to make sure if we say we're going to hit you with liquidated damages, we do. We're doing contractor evaluations on all of our contractors right now, and the reason you do those is so that if you really have a problem with a contractor and they score low, after a couple times of that, then you don't have to hire them anymore. And when you go to court, you've got the defense built up in the documentation. So again, working on the specs is the first thing that I'm working on, and trying to, again, make a contractor, don't let a whole piece of Westnedge be torn up for the whole summer, because there are ways to deal with that. And already for Kalamazoo, which is the next one out of the chute, we're going to break it up into 1 or 2 block sections. It's going to take longer. It's going to cost a little more, but we're going to be able to handle that a lot better. Okay, that's my objective right now, is to do that. So again, we learned a lot, but it also gives us a chance to write new specifications and to put in place some documentation things that help us if and when we have to go to court to defend ourselves.
Commissioner Pradel?
All right. Thank you, Dennis, for being here today. In one of your comments in the beginning of the presentation, you mentioned that the percentage decrease in crashes before and after was 23% here locally, which you said was really high compared to what you've seen. You mentioned that that's about 6 or 7% higher than the state of Michigan as a whole.
Yes.
But then you also said that nationwide crashes are up. So my question, did I hear that correctly?
Pedestrian and bicycle in particular, although the fatals are up nationwide too.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my question was, is Michigan kind of in tandem doing more than nationwide? Does that make sense? So obviously we're doing way more than the state as a whole. Is Michigan doing more?
Yeah. And I don't know. I can get all of Michigan's crashes. Again, to get the nationwide numbers, it takes a couple years. So I've got a lag that I can't really tell. So I can't answer that for you right now.
And the reason I'm asking is just because then you wonder, from a statistical perspective, if there's other factors at play that are swinging the tide in a positive direction for like a region or a state or, you know, those sort of things. And so I just was curious.
Sure. And I don't know.
It's fair.
It'll be something for us to look at. It's a fair question.
Sure.
Yeah.
The other question I had for you as well is, as you're looking at those statistics, I don't know about everyone else up here, but this year I've seen a lot of like angry motorists that are kind of lashing out, I think, from frustration or whatever. And so it makes you wonder, like, what would these statistics look like post-construction world, you know? And it makes you wonder if maybe, it's, you know, you wonder if they would be maybe lower if you didn't have as much construction. Not insinuating we shouldn't have done the construction, but I'm just saying, like, how much does construction just in itself impact road rage and crashes just because people might not know where to turn and turn the wrong place, or maybe go faster down a road than they should have because they're trying to find some shortcut.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and it worries me, especially as I go down the southern part of West Nitch where things are pretty open, and I've got a lot of traffic going back there, and I see them back at 40 or 45 miles an hour, and I worry about my number jumping all of a sudden. And not so much that it just jumped. Again, I'm going to end up with people being hurt. So we're going to be looking at that over the winter. Depending on the weather, I should be able to get some good feel for it, especially if hopefully it won't snow a lot until January, and I'll be able to pick up a couple months of data to see what's happening. Again, to kind of tweak things, adjust them for the next season, and do things like that. One thing I did find, and again, while I know I diverted some traffic off of Michigan because people just wanted to go on I-94 and go fast, for other detours, in particular the West Nitch detour, what I found is a big chunk of those people went over to Oakland, and that's why you were getting a lot of complaints about the Oakland and Parkview signal, because they just had 25% more traffic on that street from West Nitch. A lot of them went over to Burdick, or a few went over to Burdick, and a lot went over to Portage. And I just told you what makes sense. We set the detour up there for Burdick in general. But people went to Oakland and Portage because that's where the entrances to I-94 are. So the data is so nice to help us look at questions like you have. But what I really wanted to say is we had the same number of people running through town. So it wasn't because everybody left town and they took their crashes with them. It's that they just moved around. And I didn't have an increase on Oakland, which is cool. I haven't seen anything up Portage yet. But again, it's kind of a constant. I try to spend a day's worth of time every 2 weeks or so just cranking numbers and updating things.
You answered one of my questions about that intersection of Parkview and Oakland, so thank you for doing that as well. The other thing I had a question for you as well, you know, we don't know yet for sure the impact tangibly, but Business Loop 131, you know, that was something that was a large priority that the city of Kalamazoo lobbied for. How much do you think that will impact congestion and the issues that we see through downtown and neighborhoods when that project is done?
Yeah, that's a great question, because until we get an alternate route for people to get off that interchange and head again across east-west, I don't think there'll be a lot of changes, unfortunately. Mazel Road, in my opinion, needs to be beefed up so that it can, and connected to that new interchange configuration. We've already started talking at CATS and with the Road Commission about that, and I've told them they need us to help them lobby for money to get the federal aid to do that work. I know us, our grant team, Carrie and Amanda, we're willing to help that, because in the end it helps us. It helps, it gets people off Park and West Nitch. It will help us beef up whatever road we need to get up to Mazel to help folks. So it gets to be a bigger picture. It's going to take a while to get there, but we've told them that we're willing to help them do that. So, and I wanted to mention one other thing about that Parkview and Oakland signal. And you may have seen the note this week, and I have, because I've been looking at it, down at Kilgore, or White's and Westnedge. We also did up at a stadium. We're putting some new signal equipment into effect. It's really nice. It adjusts based upon how many cars are standing in the queue. It adds time and backs away. It really looks like it's working.
Is that stadium in Howard?
Yeah.
Yes. That was an area.
So those three are there, and I think, I know I'm seeing the difference, but, I'm prejudiced a bit. But we're trying this new gear out, and it seems to be working really good. So the requirement I need to do that at places is I need cameras, and I need connections. And we've been installing lots of cameras, but that's why I can't have every place done all at once. We're still filling in some gaps on fiber and on cameras.
Yep. One more question for you as well I wrote down here. So the other one is just an example of that Howard Hill from Vine neighborhood to the middle school, and just some concerns about young people crossing there to get to school. And I know I've seen your exchanges back to folks, and I always appreciate your thoughtful responses to people as well. But can you just explain, for people who get frustrated if there's kind of let's call it a critical safety crosswalk or whatever, what can delay those, or what things we can do in the short term? What things we know maybe holistically are on the horizon for those areas that might be around school? I know there was a lot of work done on Lover's Lane, but I know one area that I continue to hear a lot from people is that Howard Hill crosswalk.
Yeah. Actually, we've done something as we speak almost down at the existing crossing, and we've been working with Professor Ron Van Houten over at Western Michigan, who's doing some really nice work on pedestrian lighting. And we've just installed some pedestrian focus lights. So when you hit that button out there, the light focuses down right on the crosswalk. And what he found, this is hot off the data, off the press, when those lights go on, traffic speeds, even for people who won't stop, and they're those bad people, traffic speeds decrease by 8 miles an hour, which is really significant. I'm happy with 2 miles an hour, but those lights, and we're putting them around the city as almost as quickly as possible, again, within my budget, but they really work, and that's what we've done out there. We've been playing with them the last couple of weeks because he wanted to get some before data, because he's been writing this up for the highway department to see. But the highway department also knows that we've been doing this really advanced work, and it's really working great. So you're going to see more and more of those around the city as we go along. I think I'm looking first at all the crossings where we've had the little by the side of the street signs that nobody cares about, and start lighting those up. So hopefully I'll get some out here in front of City Hall for you all.
Yeah.
But I've got some other places that I'm working on first.
And I know we approved some funding for some safety enhancements along Portage Road, but the third place that concerns me a lot is the elementary school along Portage Road. Just the way that Portage Road curves around that way, freaks me out every single time I see people crossing there, and especially young people during the school hour. I mean, the crossing guards can only do so much, but Millwood Elementary, the elementary on Portage, Maple Middle School, those three are areas that can't probably have enough.
Yeah, and again, the lights are constrained a bit by the fact that they have a photocell on them, but this time of the year, especially in the fall and the spring, they make a difference. We might even play with them a little bit because the intensity of the light is such that it might make some difference in the daytime. I don't know, we haven't checked that, but they really work. So you can tell people, and I know I keep looking down at the Portage location for you. I talked to another person today about it. Again, part of it is just getting to it and making sure that we've tailored the solution so that it doesn't cause a problem. And the data is saying right now I'm not causing problems by doing this stuff. Okay, and we need to have that kind of confidence in what we're doing.
For sure. Yep, that's good enough. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, commissioners? All right, appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. I'm just going to ask a couple things myself here. Just wanted to follow up. I know because this isn't really in the scope of work for a traffic engineer necessarily, but the challenges we've had about our business partners here in town, and some of them being critically and foundationally important business partners here in town that have, by the work they do, have, literally transformed neighborhoods, ended food deserts, things like that. Folks that have been just great partners. So I know that's not always easy to do, to address those issues at the same time we're doing this work. We just had another announcement about a small business that's closing here in town and attributing it to the challenges that people have had getting to their location. It's always very challenging to witness that, experience it, and feeling a bit frustrated about what can you do about it. And I know we've talked to our city manager's office and tried to come up with plans about what are other things, that we can do to try to be helpful. So I know that's something that you're thinking about, and I know that we'll think about that more at the city manager's office. I did have one particular question, though, and that's just related to what you've brought up, the people finding other routes to get to places. And I know this most certainly is part of your calculation, but there is a certain, water seeks its, its fastest route around barriers sort of thing. And I'm noticing some effects, for example, over, with taking away the Elm Street crossover there, which was a path a lot of people used to get into that neighborhood, and now it's a more circuitous route to get, into that neighborhood. And I do have concerns that is that driving people, for example, up level and, through that neighborhood curving back around. So how do you incorporate those kinds of issues in relating? Are we pushing traffic into neighborhoods, and what are the results of those sorts of things?
Actually, a lot of people are going through the Walgreens parking lot, which we're installing some signs. I think that's the easiest thing for me to be able to do first. The signs are cheap compared with everything else. We're putting some signs in over there to try to at least let people know and give the police a tool, if they have time, to be able to do something. We know about that problem. Part of it will get taken care of when we get Kalamazoo a little further along. But I think you may have saw, especially this summer, for the cut-through areas, I haven't been shy about plopping in stop signs, making four-way stops, to at least, again, give police a tool if they need to try to stop some of the folks who are diverting. And I guess we could probably all agree, if they divert, maybe we'd rather they didn't do it, but if at least they have the respect to follow the speed limit, it's tolerable. So it's kind of what I've been looking at. It's just like downtown. If you go 30 miles an hour downtown, that's great. I actually, more power to you, but have some respect for the people who live and work there, and that's what I'm looking for in the neighborhood. So that's not a real good answer, but we're looking at the problem, and we're not afraid to just try suggestions or do things. It does take a while to put speed humps in. Okay, I can't plop one in just the day after somebody calls. We have to program it for the next season. So some things are quicker than others. Signs are easy, and we're not afraid to use signs. So if you at least let me know what's happening or what you're hearing, that helps me try to engineer stuff.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Once again, any other follow-up? Yes, Commissioner Prater?
It occurred to me when I was referring to the elementary school on Portage Road, I want to make sure that I'm talking about Washington Writers Academy. So there's Millwood Elementary, but then there's Washington Writers Academy, and I'm talking about if you were to be going like northbound on Portage Road, when it curves around You have
Yes.
Washington Writers Academy to the right, and there's a lot of people that cross through that in the Edison neighborhood. So it's those three schools when I was referring to that: Millwood Elementary, Washington Writers Academy, Maple Middle.
There's a real difference of the area north of Stockbridge where we did the nice calming, and the area all the way to the south, including that transition from 4 to 3. So that is on my radar, yes.
Thank you. Anything else? Thank you, sir. Appreciate your efforts and being here with us this evening. Manager Isma.
That concludes our work session.
All right, thank you so much. Now is the opportunity for commissioner comments for our committee of the whole. Just a reminder for anyone who's paying attention that there is also a commissioner comment time on our business meeting. Most of the commissioners generally take advantage of that opportunity to provide comments. But are there any comments for our committee of the whole meeting from commissioners? All right, seeing none, then our business meeting starts at 7, and this meeting is adjourned.